money in the desert playing golf. Don't chase shorts.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Savage Nation. Now, you can turn off the rap. This is the Savage Nation. I want to read you some production notes that I sent to the staff yesterday afternoon. It's on michaelsavage.com. We have a new feature which is listing the production notes and the monologues. But here's what I sent them, a one-paragrapher. Bear with me. I wrote, guys, try to get for tomorrow Beethoven Symphony No. 9 conducted by John Elliott Gardner, especially cut No. 5, O Freunde nicht diese Töne. I want to play this all day and talk about how we've gone from Beethoven as the cultural zenith to gutter rapsters in one single degeneration. How young musical types used to try to achieve greatness by aspiring to playing Beethoven's Ninth, while today they might aspire to sing like a drug-dealing pimp. And how the same thing holds true for all other aspects of Western civilization. Young aspiring idealists once dreamed of being the next Louis Pasteur or Albert Einstein, but today we have thousands of mini Milkins with Bernie Madoff as the end of the line. That's what I sent them. Now, the reason I'm talking about this is because America is changing as we speak. If you want to talk about Obama and what he represents, we can do that. Today is all about race today. It's Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which is all about race. So let's talk about race for a moment. Let's talk about the curious and sensitive case of Obama's mixed race heritage. Notice I say sensitive, so bear with me and listen carefully. You see, the far left and the far right are going to play racial politics with Obama's presidency, and they are doing so before he's even been inaugurated. Racist liberals are complaining about Obama's mixed race heritage because they feel he isn't black enough. Now, of course, they will blame anything bad he does on his white genes and anything good he does on his black genes. On the other side of the aisle, racist conservatives are pointing out Obama's mixed race heritage as well. They will attribute anything good he does to his white genes and anything bad he does to his black genes. Now, what does that have to do with Beethoven? Everything and nothing. But my point is well taken. Take a look at yesterday's musical excerpts from the inaugural concert in Washington, D.C. None of them were on the level of Beethoven. There were no classical musicians. It was Bono again, one of the greatest frauds of our time. Bruce Springsteen, who's on both sides of the aisle at the same time. Stevie Wonder, who's a fine musician, but certainly not the kind of cultural representation that I would like to see at an inauguration, frankly. And as I said to you, in my day, people shot for the moon culturally. They shot for the moon. And I'll have to repeat it to you again. Anyone in music used to want to play in a symphony, and particularly Beethoven's Ninth. But look at the white boys today in particular. They get pants that hang down underneath their skinny white behinds with no belts, and they try to act like a drug-dealing pimp. You say, well, that's a symptom of our times. It sure is. But what about all the other aspects of Western civilization? Tens of thousands of the brightest used to want to be the next great savior of humanity through a medical discovery. Today they short-circuit it and they want to be on Wall Street and rob their grandmother of her life savings. Now, who are you going to blame for this? I don't know. You can blame anyone you want. It doesn't matter to me, but that's where we're at today. And that's really why we have Obama as the president. For over 30 to 40 years, it started with the far-left radical feminists who were screaming, and I remember at Stanford, hey, hey, ho, ho, Western civ has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, Western civilization has got to go. The radical lesbians tried to topple the patriarchy, and they tried to overthrow Western civilization. And they've more or less achieved their ends. Now, the Republicans are as much to blame for Obama's ascension to the presidency as anyone else. And the reason I say to blame is because the man is the most far-left senator in American history. I mean, let's be clear. Maybe he's a very nice guy, but I'm sure Karl Marx was kind to his pets as well. It has nothing to do with whether he's nice or telegenic, or whether he has a nice wife and nice children. Obama's voting record is that of the most extreme leftist in the history of the U.S. Senate. We now have him as president. But he didn't come in on a wing and a prayer. He was put there by the Republicans as much as by anything else. George Bush's disastrous tenure of 8 years I don't want to reiterate it, is as much a reason for Obama's ascendancy to the presidency as is the Republicans running the hack John McCain. Remember, Romney could have beaten Obama by at least 20 points. Romney is young, Romney is telegenic, Romney's a self-made businessman. He would have won. But strangely, he was pulled out of the race virtually overnight in the middle of the primaries, and they put the hack in John McCain. I have a theory on this. That is, the Republicans knew they were going to sack the Treasury in the last month or two, and they didn't want another Republican sitting there in the hot seat. So they figured, let the far left Obama take it, or even Hillary, it wouldn't matter, so that the Republicans can come back in 4 years with Romney and say, let us fix the economy, and then they can rob us for another 8 years. This is the Savage Nation. Phone number is 1-800-449-8255. Now, this is not all related to Beethoven's Ninth, but I must tell you, yesterday was a long Sunday for me. I was alone most of the day, which I prefer. I put myself in the states of solitude almost to the extent that I can't take it anymore. But it's usually at the perimeters of solitude that I get some good thoughts. And I was digging around in my old CD stack in a house I hadn't been in a long time, and I stumbled upon John Elliott Gardner's Symphony No. 9. Now, Gardner, his version of Beethoven's Ninth, and I've heard many of them, to me was the most moving. I don't know if you know it, but John Elliott Gardner actually conducted a symphony that used period instruments for the Ninth. Now, something happens to me when I listen to Beethoven. I begin to shudder. I can't think. My mind closes down. And I sit there in awe as though something, well, not as though, but something happens to me. Almost no other music does it to me. Beethoven does it to me. My body starts to quiver. I know it sounds crazy. It sounds like I'm being overly dramatic. I'm just giving you a relationship between me and a particular piece of music for a reason, and I'll get back to politics in a moment on the Savage Nation. What happens to me is I get very, very upset that on the same planet that I am walking, a man named Beethoven once walked. That as bright as I like to think I am, there was a man perhaps 10,000 times brighter than I am named Beethoven. In his mind, instead of having the clutter that I have, in his mind, instead of having the emotional baggage that I have, in his mind, instead of having the political pollution that I have, in his mind, instead of having the refuse of civilization that I have, as bright as I think I might be, there was a man who had this music in between his ears. And I shudder to think how rare that is. And then my body shuts down, my mind shuts down, and all I can do is shudder before greatness. This is the Savage Nation. Play a little bit of Beethoven again for the folks as we go out on this break. I'll take your calls at 1-800-449-8255. We'll also talk about the brainwashing of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. The brainwashing of Martin Luther King Jr. Day.